We often hear the story. Jesus, a humble teacher, calls a group of poor, educated fishermen, and together they change the world. It's a powerful image. But is it historically accurate? Were Jesus' disciples really poor, simple fishermen with no education or influence? Or is the truth more complex than we've been told? Let's take a closer look. The Gospels mention that several of Jesus' first disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, were fishermen. They lived and worked around the Sea of Galilee. Because of this, many assume they were impoverished laborers, scraping by day to day. But in first-century Galilee, fishing wasn't always a poor man's job. In fact, fishing was part of a large, organized industry, heavily taxed and controlled by local elites. Historical evidence shows that fishing families often owned boats, employed hired workers, and participated in trade. In Mark's Gospel, for example, James and John are said to have left their father and hired men in the boat, suggesting they ran a family business, not just worked in it. That's not poverty. That's small business ownership. What about education? We often assume the disciples were illiterate, but in Jewish culture of the time, basic literacy was common, especially for those involved in commerce or religious life. And then there's Matthew, described as a tax collector. He would have needed to read, write, calculate, and likely speak multiple languages. Tax collectors weren't popular, but they weren't poor or uneducated either. Another disciple, Simon the Zealot, may have been part of a revolutionary political movement that would require strategy, ideology, and organization, not exactly traits of an unthinking laborer. Then we have Judas Iscariot, who acted as the group's treasurer. He managed their money, which implies financial knowledge and perhaps a level of trust, at least in the beginning. Even the group as a whole seems to have had financial support. The Gospels mention that wealthy women, like Joanna and Mary Magdalene, helped fund Jesus' ministry. This suggests the disciples were part of a broader social network that included the well-connected. So, where did the poor and uneducated idea come from? Partly, it comes from the book of Acts, where Peter and John are called unschooled, ordinary men. But this may refer more to their lack of rabbinic training, not a total lack of intelligence or literacy. More importantly, the image of humble disciples served a powerful theological message that God chooses the lowly to shame the powerful. It's inspiring but not necessarily a full picture of historical reality. So, were the disciples poor fishermen? Some were likely working class, but others may have been educated, politically active, financially stable, and well-connected. The movement Jesus started wasn't just grassroots, it was multi-layered, strategic, and organized. And that may be part of why it grew so quickly. In our next episode, we'll explore another overlooked detail. Did Jesus actually preach in Greek? And what language did his followers speak? Subscribe to uncover the history behind the story, one question at a time.